Your business needs help. 56.1 million employees are employed by small businesses in the United States, and 99% of all U.S. establishments are small businesses under 250 employees. That means that your business should be listening to the only podcast dedicated to small business success. That's Growth Success Radio, growthsuccessradio.com. Welcome to this week's episode of Growth Success Radio. Good morning and welcome to episode 53 of Growth Success Radio, the first episode of 2017. And today we have a very exciting guest. This show is sponsored. We are the only live video podcast dedicated to small business growth and success. We're here every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And we talk to small business owners and those that help small businesses out. And if you want to watch or listen to past episodes, just go to growthsuccessradio.com, or you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, Facebook, and a bunch of other places, I'm sure. And this, like I said, this is episode 53. We took a couple of weeks off. We closed out the year a few weeks ago and then enjoyed the holidays with our family and friends, and we are back with a vengeance, except in case you haven't noticed, we're missing one. Congratulations, Eugene. I'm not sure if he's watching, but congratulations, Eugene and Melissa, on the birth of their son, Jason. So Eugene is at home being a dad right now, so he will not be joining us today, but that's okay because Miguel's going to fill in for both roles today.
That's right.
We are co-sponsored, and now we have a third sponsor. So obviously we're sponsored by Scott Gombar Digital Marketing Agency and Traeger Resnitsky Insurance. And we are now also sponsored by Milford Performance Center, who will be having their first concert a week from tomorrow, January 14th, J. Rowe and Bo Bolero. So go to milfordperformancecenter.org to get your tickets. This is the part of the show where Eugene usually tells us about Traeger Resnitsky Insurance. I can tell you his role there is he's a commercial insurance agent, and he provides businesses with the protection they need from liability issues and so forth. And I'm sure I'm butchering it, but that's what he does. And he loves to say he speaks insurance so his clients don't have to. And I am a digital marketer. I own a digital marketing agency, and what we do is all things digital, really. We help you grow revenue through things like Google and Facebook and your website and digital advertising and so forth. And then Eugene would usually provide us with an update in the insurance world, but I can't help you with that one. For me, I'll just say this will probably be the year of live streaming. As you can see, that's what we're doing right now with Miguel, and I think this will be the explosion of live streaming this year. Twitter just launched a couple weeks ago their live streaming. They've always had it, but it was separate app from Twitter, so now it's part of Twitter. So instead of me broadcasting to the few hundred that follow me on Periscope, now I'm broadcasting to the 26,000 that follow me on Twitter. So the engagement's a little better. And with us today, we have Miguel Almodovar. I should be able to say that because it sounds like my name, but it's a hard name to say. Miguel is an attorney in New Haven, Connecticut, and works at Jacobs and Rozek. What street is that on?
William Street.
William Street. Worcester Square, which is a really nice section in New Haven. So, if you like Italian food, it's a great place to go. And then you can stop in and see Miguel. Areas of practice include collections, zoning, and construction law, but I'm going to let him explain that further. So, Miguel, welcome. Happy New Year. First, tell us about yourself and Jacobs and Rozek.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Scott. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong Connecticut resident. I went to UConn undergrad and law school. And in my spare time, I like to homebrew and to run. I've actually entered a couple homebrew contests in the past couple of years. And then professionally, in addition to the work I do at Jacobs and Rozek, I also am part of the New Haven County Bar Association Public Service Committee. I'm the co-chair there. So I like to keep busy. And then Jacobs and Rozek, it's a firm based in New Haven, Connecticut. It's been in business for over 10 years at this point. And while we're based in New Haven, we do have statewide coverage for the state of Connecticut, both state and federal bars in the state of Connecticut. So we're not a general practice firm. If someone walks in wanting a will, we can't do that. We have other attorneys that we know who we would send them to, but not a general practice firm. We focus on civil litigation and zoning work. That's it. That's what we specialize in. And so that's just a little bit about the firm and myself.
Awesome. I didn't know you homebrewed.
Yes.
So do you ever run and brew at the same time?
No, that wouldn't go too well. It's a lot of hot liquids when you're brewing.
That I didn't know either. I'm not a beer drinker, so I don't know. But it's interesting because I just saw a video on Facebook yesterday of a woman trying to drink wine while running on the treadmill. It didn't end well.
No, I can't imagine it would.
No.
It wasn't red wine.
Actually, it was, and it wound up on the wall and a couple other places. I'll have to share that video with you sometime. So today we're going to focus primarily on the small business owners who are maybe struggling to collect on invoices and so forth. Can you tell us when a business should expect payment when they send out an invoice?
So that does depend on the terms that the business has set within their own invoices. So if a business sets a 30-day period, probably they should expect to be paid within 30 days of providing the good or service. Most businesses that we deal with at Jacobs and Rozek have essentially a 30, 60, 90, 120 day criteria for their invoices. They want to be paid within 30 days. If they're not paid within 120 days, usually that's the time where they start to say, all right, this is not going to get paid for whatever reason. The client is not interested in paying this. Perhaps there's a dispute about the services provided or the goods provided, or perhaps the client has just dropped off the face of the earth, which unfortunately happens sometimes. So that is one of the things that is absolutely within the control of the business owner. They can set whatever time period they would like for the most part in terms of payment, and then push to be paid within that time period.
And you find typically businesses want 30 days or set it up for 30 days?
Typically, businesses will set up 30 days. I have seen 45 days occasionally, but it is usually a 30-day turnaround. And that's important for cash flow, as you know, as a small business owner yourself. You don't want to do work and then be waiting 2 months, 3 months to be paid because you've got bills of your own to pay. And all small business owners understand that.
That's right. I have kids to feed.
Exactly.
One of them doesn't eat, but the other one makes up for it. So, and so you just said it, but at what point should a business consider an invoice uncollectible?
So a business, the small businesses that we work with, it's typically after 120 days. That's the extent of the self-collection process for a small business. Beyond 120 days, if the client hasn't paid and they're not picking up the phone anymore, and they've expressed to you, probably at this point, they've said, well, you know what, those widgets you sent me were actually broken, so I'm not paying them, or I'm not paying for them, or whatever the case may be. You left a mess when you finished cleaning up my apartment or my business, whatever it is. It's usually about 120 days, because at that point, if the client hasn't paid, they're not going to willingly, most likely. You've left the realm of forgetting it on the back burner to now it's probably intentional that they're not paying it.
Okay, and that brings up an interesting point. So is there a responsibility on the client's part to say, I'm not happy with the service or product you provided, And if they do they have to, do they have to tell you within the 30 days? Do they have to tell the business within the 30 days, or, is there some leeway there? At what point can they make that claim and not pay the invoice?
Sure. So as an attorney, I look at everything from the lens of litigation, what would hold up in court. And from my perspective, especially as a collector attorney, as a business attorney, if a complaint about quality is made within the 30 days, it seems a lot more credible. It's a lot more likely to be true if it's made within 30 days versus if it's made 6 months later after the invoice hasn't been paid and there hasn't been communication. It sort of seems like an excuse at that point, 6 months later. If it's within 30 days, more likely to be a legitimate dispute. And from an attorney's perspective, more likely to have traction if and when we get involved with the file. If we look through the notes and see, 15 days later, they were already sending emails saying, hey, there's something wrong here. That's a conversation we have with our clients to say, is there any validity to this? Because looking at it from the perspective of standing in front of a judge, is a judge going to look at that and say, hey, this is a legitimate complaint. Why didn't you deal with it?
Okay. So the longer they wait to make that claim, the less likely it's going to hold any validity.
Right.
Awesome. And what rights does a business owner have when an invoice goes uncollected?
So the business owner has a right to make demand on their client. So they can send letters, emails, phone calls. They have a right to negotiate with the client. And this is probably the most effective way of getting an invoice paid for. Because if a client is simply having cash flow issues themselves, likely they are not trying to stiff the business. They're just simply can't pay. And if you negotiate, hopefully can come up with some sort of phased payment plan, half now, half within 30 days, something like that. Business owners have a right to do that. And finally, most importantly, business owners have a right to get in touch with an attorney and speak with an attorney about their invoices and about their receivables.
Okay, that's interesting. And I've done that in the past myself, where I said, hey, listen, I maybe you're having a hard time. Here's what we could do. We could spread the payments out. And I think I've spoken to other business owners that have done the same thing. So I think that's an interesting point. Don't just immediately jump to pay me or else. Maybe there's a different solution that's amicable for everybody.
Right. And even when files end up in our office, that is the first line we take after we get a file. If the other side is represented, we give the other attorney a call and say, hey, what's going on here? Is this simply a cash flow issue, as you've indicated, or is there a serious dispute about quality, or is this just a situation that you run into, unfortunately, especially in my line of work, where someone's trying to get over on someone else and just try and take advantage? And once you understand where the other side is coming from, that really does dictate how you proceed on the case. But it's always advantageous to get some money up front. Because once an attorney gets involved, things can take some time, especially if the other side is represented by counsel and they end up getting an attorney who knows their way around the courtroom. They can really delay things. So better to amicably resolve it if possible.
And that's another, you brought up another interesting fact, get some money up front. So that's something that my business does. Is there's an initial deposit, and then there's usually most of the work is split up into thirds. So initial deposit, and then somewhere in the middle, and then a final payment. And I know a lot of other businesses that also do this, but not all businesses do that. And I think there are some businesses that simply can't for whatever reason. It's payments required at the time of sale or service. So if you can, that's another option. Get and then by doing so, you also know that the end client is probably more likely to pay you at the end as well.
Right. And especially in a business like yours, Scott, you can kind of dictate when payments come in and when work gets done. And so that's a great thing about your line of work. Some of our clients, for example, provide food to restaurants, and a lot of that gets done on a credit basis. And so the restaurant will order $10,000 worth of food for the weekend and then has to pay it down within those 30 days. Sometimes when those terms are not honored, then they'll go to a cash on delivery payment plan. So the business owner has to have the $10,000 in hand before anything gets offloaded. One of the things that ends up happening a fair amount in those situations is while the two principals of the business, the restaurant owner and the supplier, may have an understanding that it's cash on delivery, the truck driver and the GM of the restaurant or whoever's actually accepting delivery just want to get the goods exchanged, because the truck driver's got somewhere else to go and make delivery, and the manager of the restaurant just wants to get the food because they've got customers. So that we do see a breakdown there on a not a regular basis, but that is one of the areas where we do find our clients get into trouble, not saying cash on delivery, but then not necessarily enforcing that.
Right. I've seen that as well. Yeah. So what are some of the other things that businesses can do to avoid reaching the point of having to contact you?
Right. So I'd say there's two major things that businesses can do. The first is contract, and the second is their conduct. Those are the two major ways that businesses can protect themselves. With regard to a contract, having clear due dates, having attorney's fees and late fees actually written into the contract so that the client, the end user, understands that if this goes bad, you're going to have to pay for someone else's attorney. And that can really spiral out of control, especially if trial is needed, discovery, depositions, et cetera. It can get expensive. And then lastly, specifying an interest rate. Connecticut has recently changed the rules regarding interest post-judgment, so after a judgment is entered. So, and there's actually a blog post on my firm's website about that. And it's actually shifted now to be much more advantageous to business owners who write in higher interest rates into their contracts. So that's something that business owners should really consider, because that just adds as another stick. If we're talking about carrots and sticks in terms of payment, that's another stick where you can say to a client, look, interest is accruing at 12, 13, 15% on this. Do you really want to let this keep going, or do you want to pay me something now? So that's with the contract. And then in terms of conduct, it's really about creating a relationship with the client that fosters communication and fosters timely payments. So if you let invoices languish for 60 days and then really start pushing, the client is going to say, well, I can get away with paying 60 days later. If they can get away with 60, why not 70? So really kind of holding firm on whatever your payment period is and pushing it consistently, in a friendly way at first. Obviously they're your client. You don't want to alienate them, but really being on top of those invoices and not letting them get too far is probably most important. That's really how you conduct your business in terms of getting paid on time. So those are the two major areas that I think are important for business owners to remember: the contract and then conduct.
That's awesome. I did not know, and so I do typically have it's a pretty simple contract, but a contract for the work I do. And I never thought to include attorney fees, and I never thought about interest. I'm going to have to go back and read that blog post. So that's at jacobsandrozic.com, right?
Yes.
So I'll include it in the show notes, because it's Rozic is spelled ROZICH, jacobsandrozic.com. And it's also jandrllc.com.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Are there things a business owner can do to try to get an invoice paid without speaking to an attorney? So in other words, it's been past 30 days.
Right. So beyond negotiating with the client, like we just talked about, the other option would be to bring a small claims suit if they felt like they were owed money. Now, small claims, you're limited to $5,000, but it's a streamlined process. You can go in and you basically tell your story to the judge, and the other side gets to tell their story to the judge. So it's an informal procedure. Usually gets resolved within 60 days, potentially 90 days, depending on what is filed. But when you put it next to litigation in the Superior Court, which typically lasts between 12 and 18 months, getting it resolved in 2 to 3 months could be beneficial for small business owners who are looking to collect smaller sums. And then you don't have to get an attorney involved, so you don't have to worry about attorney's fees or contingency fees, however the relationship is set up.
And are there fees involved in doing small claims?
There are fees. The entry fee for a small claim suit, I believe, is now $90. That may have gone up recently. But with small claims, you can serve the other party by certified mail, which is $6, $7 versus having a marshal go out there. And marshals typically cost $50, $60, $70, depending on what they need to do. So when you're talking about a debt of $1,500, if it only takes you, $100 or so to get it started, that's much more worthwhile than the $600 it takes to start a Superior Court case.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the things that I've done, and I don't, this might not be the right thing to do, and you can tell me, is I've sent an email or a letter saying, hey, I'm going to just get my attorney involved with getting this invoice paid. And that works for me like half the time. They turn around and pay it. They say, no, why? We don't need to do all that. And they just pay it. Is that something that a business owner should do?
Yes. If you have an attorney that you're working with or you have a relationship with and you're going to send the file to that attorney, absolutely give the other side a heads up. If nothing else, it puts them on notice that you're serious about this, and they can't say that you blindsided them with an attorney. So when they get a letter from my office and they call up and say, hey, what is all this about? Why is Scott making such a big deal about this invoice? I can say, hey, I've got an email from him a month ago where he said he was going to get me involved and you ignored it. And so I think that's absolutely a good idea if you're serious about getting an attorney involved.
Good to know. I was never sure if I was overstepping there. I've only done it a couple times, but it worked.
Yeah, and some debtors will claim that you're threatening them or whatever, and it's not a threat. You're serious about it, and you're serious about getting paid, and like you said, you're feeding your kids. So
that's right. That's right. I'm feeding my kids. So once you do get a case, you get a file in your office. What is the process there?
Sure. So for our office, our general rule of thumb is $5,000 and up. Means that the file is viable for suit, because we don't do any small claims work. That's really for people to represent themselves. And frankly, it's a little bit of the Wild West there. So we only bring suits in Superior Court. So $5,000 is our threshold. And then it's $600 in costs to get the case started. And that's just for the entry fee and the marshal. And then basically when we get the file in, we're going to review the documents, make sure there's enough there to bring a case. Because as attorneys, we have to have a good faith basis to bring the case. So if it's evidenced only by, basically an email or something like that, we're going to turn around and say, hey, you got to give us invoices, pictures, something like that. So we'll review, check the balances. Then we do an asset search on the debtor, see if they own any property, see if they're working. And if they are, and the client wants to move forward, we send a demand letter. For individuals, it's 30 days we give them. For businesses, we'll send them a 10-day demand letter. If we don't receive a response, then we file a lawsuit. And then once the lawsuit's begun, kind of Not anything can happen, but you kind of see how the litigation progresses. And once we get judgment, then that's where our firm really starts to shine, because we again do asset searches, and then we have a whole series of post-judgment collection activities that we engage in.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is, and that's why people hire attorneys. So, for example, with post-judgment work, as you may know, a judgment is just a piece of paper,
right?
And that says someone owes you money. And the trick is to get money out of that judgment. So we have processes for wage executions where you can actually go and garnish someone's wages, property executions where you can go and take either money that they're owed and direct it to our clients, or bank executions where you can go and take money out of their bank account. We also, in some situations, have filed judgment liens on people's property, real property, and then foreclosed on those judgment liens to really encourage payment. And then we can also do what are called examinations of judgment debtors, where you bring the person into court, they're put under oath by the judge, and then you just get to talk to them about their assets. Where are you banking? How are you making money? What do your retirement assets look like? What is your real property? Do you have any timeshares? You'd be surprised how many people have timeshares. So that's really the hard work. After you get a judgment, really the hard work is turning that judgment into money.
Okay. So your firm also focuses on a few other areas of practice. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So in addition to collections work, we also do construction, zoning, personal injury, and then housing law. So that's landlord-tenant law, evictions, that sort of thing.
Awesome. I hear that Connecticut is heavily favors the tenant. Is that true?
There are a lot of protections for tenants in Connecticut. That being said, if you know what you're doing in housing court, you can get an eviction going and get at least a judgment within 60 days or so. Whether or not you can get someone out after that is up to the judge, because, and this is probably where the perception comes from that it's a tenant-friendly state, is once you have a judgment, there's a stay of execution, and the judge gets to decide how long that stay is. And that can be 3 months or up to 6 months in some cases.
And I've also heard that also depends on whether or not there's children involved and the weather at that time.
Right. So judges, it has to do with whether, so there's a couple things. First of all, if there's children and they're in the middle of the school year, judges will be reluctant to kick them out. And then if they don't have anywhere to go, that's also another factor. I mean, judges are people too. They don't want to see someone out on the street, essentially.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Weather like today, 20s and snow. Yeah.
20s and snow. Yeah. You don't want someone on the street.
Exactly.
And another misperception is too that you can't receive rent during that time. The tenant still has to pay during their occupancy, even if there's a summary process action commenced. The landlord can move for what's called use and occupancy. So it's the rental payment. It's just not called rent because the lease is terminated. So the landlord should be receiving money during that time period, even if the tenant is technically being evicted.
Gotcha. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. So we do this on every show. We started late last year, but we're doing it on every show now. You have 30 seconds. Your sales pitch. Tell us why a business should work with Jacobs and Rozic, and more specifically, Miguel.
So our law firm, it's a small firm. There's 2 attorneys. It's myself and Ken Rozic, who's one of the founding members of the firm. We're lean. We provide excellent customer service. When you call up, you can always get either Ken or I on the phone. Not only that, we provide statewide coverage. So wherever you have legal need in Connecticut, we will drive out there and get it done for you. Moreover, Ken Rozic has over 20 years of experience in civil litigation. He cut his teeth trying cases for a insurance defense firm. So both he and I are extremely comfortable in the courtroom. There are attorneys who don't know the address of the courthouse. We're in court every week. We're very comfortable there, and we have a reputation for that. So when we get involved in a case, other attorneys know, hey, these guys are serious. These guys will take it to trial, and that does encourage settlement in a lot of cases. So personal service and experience, you can't do any better than Jacobs and Rosick.
Awesome. That was almost like a perfect commercial.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's funny. I know attorneys had to never go to court, so it's funny you say that. So we also do this thing, and I warned you about this, but I didn't tell you what it was involved. The fire round, 4 quick questions that you have to answer at the top of your head, and they may or may not have anything to do with what you do professionally, but we'll see how it goes.
All right.
So the first question, because so I know you outside of this, so this is why this question came up: city or suburb living?
City.
Okay. Second one: courtroom or settlement?
Courtroom.
I had a feeling you'd say that. Okay. Biggest passion outside of your business?
Absolutely homebrewing. I love it. I'm a big beer fan. Go to a lot of craft brew festivals, and just absolutely love brewing.
Ever think you might open your own brewery?
That's the dream one day.
That wasn't one of the 4 questions, by the way. Best business advice you've ever received?
Best business advice I've ever received. It's got to be the 80-10 rule. You got, and that rule is essentially, or 80-20 rather, 80-20 rule. So you go through your day, your business, and you find the 20% of your business that brings you 80% of your revenue, and you focus your time there. And I've found that to be such a clarifying way to look at your business, to really see what is making you money, what is helping you grow, and focus there, and not on the stuff that isn't helping you get to where you want to be.
That's awesome, and I've learned that you can apply that 80-20 rule to almost everything in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Miguel, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Tell everybody how they can find you and your business again.
Sure. We're at jacobsandrosick.com, jnrllc.com, both direct to the same website. But we're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google+. And I'm also on Avvo, AVVO, which is an attorney website. I've got a profile there as well. All of our social media is LinkedIn, so if you find one, you find it all. But really appreciate the opportunity, Scott.
Thank you. Next, I just want to remind everybody, next week, I believe, I haven't gotten 100% confirmation, but we should have the person who is running the Milford Performance Center, since it'll be the day before their first concert. So he should be on with us next week at 11 a.m. That'll be the 13th, Friday the 13th. Look at that, Miguel. We have a Friday the 13th in the first month of the year.
I missed that one.
Yeah, right. And I've had him on before, and we had a lot of technical problems last time, so we'll see. Thank you again for coming on. Congrats again, Eugene and Melissa, and we will see everybody again next week. Until then, grow and succeed.